he heard a voice, and it changed everything. Not an inner voice, not a product of imagination, but a voice from another world, clear, confident, as if someone was standing right beside him. Maurice Barbanell kept silent about it for almost his entire life, until one day he dared to tell the truth. Not about death, but about life after it. What he learned from those who had already crossed the threshold shatters everything we thought we knew about the afterlife. He claimed, "It is not death that is terrifying. It is life itself if you've lived it in vain. There exists a law of soul attraction, invisible yet infallible, and no one can escape it, neither the righteous nor the hypocrite." In this video, you will learn what happens immediately after death, who meets us on the other side, and why your darkest thought could become your personal hell. But most importantly, how you can still change your fate while you're alive, beyond the veil. The tragedy lies in life, not in death. This was, in Maurice Barbanell's view, the paradoxical truth he tried to convey to the world. Barbanell, who claimed to possess the gift of mediumship, the ability to communicate directly with the spirits of the dead, did not see death as something dreadful, but rather as a liberation. His perspective on death was radically different from the conventional view. Instead of sorrow and horror, he saw a solemn release of the soul from the shackles of the physical body, a liberation from pain, suffering, and the limitations of earthly existence. In his eyes, life in the modern world, consumed by selfishness, greed, and all-devouring hatred, was a far more tragic condition than the inevitable end: death. A life full of injustice, inhumanity, and an endless cycle of suffering echoed in the messages he claimed to receive from those who had left this world. His claims, undoubtedly, spark debate. The question of whether there is life after death and whether communication with the deceased is possible has been discussed for centuries, giving rise to numerous theories and philosophies. The scientific community, for the most part, remains highly skeptical of such statements, demanding verifiable evidence that can be objectively tested. Yet millions of people around the world believe in an afterlife, in the existence of a spiritual realm. It is this belief, this deep need for comfort and hope, that gives stories like Barbanell's such extraordinary power. Barbanell, claiming to channel the direct voices of the dead, collected information about the existence that follows death. His books, translated into many languages, contain detailed descriptions of the world where souls supposedly go after death. These accounts, often emotionally rich and sincere, speak of a realm free from physical pain, but not without its own complexities and challenges. His writings describe the process of transition, reunions with deceased loved ones, and a new, broader understanding of one's own life. Yet it is important to remember that these descriptions are based solely on Barbanell's assertions. Some believe that the visions of the afterlife he presented reflect his personal hopes and convictions more than any objective reality. The possibility of life after death remains one of humanity's greatest mysteries, a question that continues to compel seekers across the ages to look beyond the veil for answers. The invisible spiritual world surrounds us at all times. It is neither distant nor unreachable. This realm merges with our physical existence, and this idea is confirmed by individuals who possess the unique ability to perceive it. Maurice Barbanell, a renowned explorer of the spiritual domain, claimed that those who can tune into the vibrations of this world are able to see and hear it. Their experiences challenge the myth that death leads to eternal sleep. In reality, according to Barbanell, after earthly life ends, The spirit undergoes a short period of rest to help it adapt to its new reality. He emphasized that a day after physical death, a person remains the same as they were a day before, with the only difference being that they have left their physical body. This existence continues in a spiritual body, which is an exact replica of their earthly form. The spiritual body, Barbanell said, is free from the infirmities and illnesses that may have burdened the person in life. For instance, if someone was deaf, they would be able to hear again in the spiritual world. One who had lost their voice would regain speech, and the blind would see the world in a new light. This underscores that the spiritual realm is free from the limitations of the physical one. Old bonds with family and friends are also restored in this new state of being. Barbanell claimed that after this short period of rest, the newly arrived spirit is met by all those who had passed before them. This happens according to a certain law. Those who have already left the physical world and dwell in the spiritual one are somehow aware of their loved one's impending transition and prepare to welcome them. This explains why some people nearing death report seeing deceased relatives. They may genuinely sense their presence. However, reunions in the spiritual world may be brief. A law of attraction governs this realm. Only those with similar spiritual qualities reside on the same level of life in the spirit world. For example, spouses who did not love each other in earthly life will not be together in the spiritual one. The afterlife, as described by Barbanell, consists of many spiritual spheres, each reflecting a certain level of consciousness and moral development. Unlike the physical world, where people can conceal their true intentions and emotions, the afterlife is governed by total transparency. Once the soul leaves the physical body, it is immediately and automatically drawn to the sphere that most accurately matches its inner world, its accumulated experience, both good and bad. This is not a judgment in the traditional sense, but rather a natural attraction to an environment resonating with its vibrational level. Imagine a spectrum. On one end are the highest spiritual spheres, filled with light, love, and harmony, and on the other, realms reflecting chaos, suffering, and the darker sides of human nature. The place of your soul on this spectrum is determined by the sum of your actions, thoughts, and emotions throughout your life. In this context, the concept of fit goes far beyond comfort. It's about resonance. A soul that lived a life of altruism and compassion will naturally be drawn to spheres where those qualities flourish. In contrast, a soul focused on selfishness and destruction will find itself among similar vibrations. A key aspect is the complete absence of illusion. In these spiritual realms, there is no place for deception or self-deception. Every thought, every emotion, every action, whether hidden or visible, becomes transparent to all inhabitants of that sphere. This is not due to divine surveillance, but is a natural consequence of the very nature of these spheres, their transparency and complete interpenetration of consciousness. You cannot pretend to be better than you truly are. Your essence, the sum of your actions, thoughts, and emotions, will become visible to everyone. There will be no judgment, only a natural placement according to your inner state. Moreover, some theories suggest that these realms are not static. They are dynamic and change depending on the collective state of the spirits within them. If positive vibrations dominate, the realm becomes brighter and more harmonious. If negative ones prevail, it becomes darker and more chaotic. This creates a kind of self-regulating system where each soul influences the surrounding spiritual environment. People who have lived normal, decent lives will find nothing disappointing when they arrive in the spiritual world. It is the selfish person who will face the greatest challenges, because their earthly habits will become obstacles to connecting with their loved ones, and that, in itself, will be their hell. Of course, those dwelling in higher realms can, if they choose, visit spirits in lower spheres, and they often do. But those in lower realms cannot visit the higher ones. Many of us tend to see the spiritual world as something vague or imaginary, existing only in the realm of fantasy. This stems from our deeply rooted materialism, a worldview that accepts only the physical plane as real. However, as Maurice Barbanell pointed out, for beings who dwell in the spiritual world, the material plane is perceived as a fleeting shadow, while the spiritual world is the true reality. It's much like how we perceive dreams. Within the dream, everything feels real, tangible, alive. But upon waking, we realize it was only an illusion. If we were to remain in a dream state indefinitely, that dream would become our only reality. Similarly, for those in the spiritual world, their realm is not merely an existence beyond physical limitations. It is a full, vibrant life. Barbanell emphasized that life beyond the physical is not passive or contemplative, but an active, dynamic process of self-realization and growth. In earthly life, many of us are unable to fulfill our true potential, bound by material burdens. Talented musicians may work in factories, gifted artists in offices, poets behind store counters. Their time and energy are consumed by the struggle to survive, leaving little room for creativity. But in the spiritual world, according to Barbanell, everything is different. There, everyone has the opportunity to devote themselves entirely to what their soul truly loves. It's not only about realizing hidden talents, but also about perfecting them, reaching heights that were impossible during earthly life due to the limits of time and resources. It is important to note that the living conditions of the spiritual world do not imply hardship or discomfort. Barbanell described it not as a void, but as a world where everything is created through the power of thought. Homes, clothing, food, all of it materializes from the desires and intentions of the inhabitants of that realm. The absence of a need for physical labor does not mean inactivity. On the contrary, the spiritual world is filled with diverse forms of activity: creativity, learning, interaction, enjoyment, and rest. Imagine an artist, freed from the necessity of earning a living, able to dedicate all their time to painting, creating masterpieces that surpass their earthly works in scale and perfection. Or a composer who can create music unrestricted by the instruments available in the physical world. Their symphonies would resonate on levels beyond the reach of the human ear. However, when envisioning the spiritual world, it's important to recognize its complexity. It is not a uniform space, but rather a vast, multi-leveled structure where each soul is given the opportunity to grow in accordance with its spiritual level and personal aspirations. The idea that there is no suffering or difficulty there is likely an oversimplification. It is possible that the spiritual world contains its own forms of challenges, not ones that involve physical pain, but ones designed to strengthen the spirit and develop wisdom. Furthermore, the very nature of these trials may be incomprehensible to us and not perceived within the limits of our materialistic understanding of reality. Thus, the spiritual realm is not merely a heavenly place, but a space of endless development, where each soul continues on its path of self-discovery and refinement, using the potential it began to form during its earthly life. Exploring this world means constantly expanding the boundaries of our consciousness and recognizing that reality is multidimensional, far exceeding our physical perception. At first glance, Maurice Barbanell's vision might seem pessimistic, portraying earthly life as devoid of inherent meaning. However, this is a surface-level interpretation. The deeper essence of his work lies in the belief that each person has an important, unique purpose, and fulfilling that purpose is what gives life its true meaning. According to Barbanell, this purpose is selfless service to others. A life lived without such service, in his view, is aimless, empty, and devoid of true fulfillment. Barbanell did not speak in vague generalities. He clearly defined what he meant by service, offering vivid examples, helping those who are lost find their way, supporting the weary and burdened, healing the sick, comforting the grieving. These acts, he believed, are not just gestures of charity, but fundamental components of a rich spiritual life. They are bridges that connect a person to higher realms of existence, allowing one to feel part of something greater than oneself. Moreover, Barbanell taught that such service not only gives life meaning, but also becomes the key to spiritual growth and self-transformation. At the heart of his philosophy lies the idea of awakening the spirit. He believed that every individual possesses an inner potential, a capacity for transformation, for overcoming their own flaws and limitations. This process, he said, is not an easy one. It requires constant self-work, reflection, and sincere striving toward inner excellence. And yet, it is this striving, this tireless self-development, that attracts spiritual beings whose existence Barbanell frequently referenced in his writings. These beings, as he described them, are not all-powerful deities. Rather, they are spiritual guides, assisting those on the path of self-improvement. They do not impose their will, but offer support and direction to those genuinely committed to spiritual growth. The assistance of the spiritual world, according to Barbanell, is not passive grace, but active collaboration, where a person makes their own choices and bears responsibility for them. Their influence is felt as inspiration, insight, unexpected encounters with the right people, and a strengthening of inner resources. Thus, Barbanell's philosophy is not merely a call for kindness, but a deep spiritual system in which serving others is not an end in itself, but a means of achieving a higher goal: the unfolding of one's inner spiritual potential and alignment with higher forces. It is a system that demands active participation, selflessness, and continuous self-work. Yet it promises the reward of profound inner fulfillment and a deep sense of meaning in life. Thank you for watching this video to the end. If you liked what you heard, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Thanks.